Welcome all to the glacial existential epic we call Sorts Issue 12, Up with the Yardkeeper. Gabby Fernandez, co-editor, helped me to choose that title. And by help, I mean did.
Recording in progress.
I like that. I don't know what caused that, but I'm very much in favor. For those of you joining us in media res, and I don't mean this particular recording, I meant the history of Sorts. Sorts is an online spinning collection of stories, poems, songs, and illustrations to help while away the wintry June nights. It's an oddball grab bag Wunderkammer mixtape offering distraction and refreshment. We don't have theme or scene. Each issue is its own creature. We publish both the sufficiently strange and the insufficiently boring. Stories, poetry, magical surrealism, beatnik travelogues, hard modern haiku, pulp fantasia anti-biography, crooning balladeering, experimental sentimentalism, and grainy sideways photography. We also host, and by the way, that bit about biography reminds me of something I said witty the other day. Someone asked if I had read a biography. I told them I do not read biography, and that if I wanted biography, I would live my own life. We also host online readings, which you is at right now. Radio Sorts, which are old-time radio performances that Betsy and Aria did the last one of, and other beloved gimmicks as they occur to us. Previous issues are available via the site's archive link. Sorts is published quarterly and accepts submissions throughout the year. Tell your friends and enemies. Everything is conveniently found at sortes.co. That is SORTES.co. That's SORTES.co. My name is Czar Jeremy Tenenbaum, the first editor-in-chief of Secret Police. There are several other Sorts editors scattered anonymously through the audience here tonight. If you can find them and befriend them, you stand a chance. Tonight we have 10 readings with 5-minute intermission halfway through. Each reader is limited to 10 minutes, so you have all the numbers you need to do the math as for when you will be off this Zoom. If you catch a reader going over 10 minutes, please unmute yourself and cry out. Speaking of mutes and pain, you are required to be muted during readings, but you are highly encouraged to unmute yourself when a reader has concluded so you can clap and hoot. It is very unfun to leave the stage to complete silence. So keep your finger near the mute button, but then, of course, mute yourself again, or I have to hit a big red button on my laptop. I will introduce each reader. I will play a little bit of music before each reader, and it's meant to be a kind of surprise, and you're meant to be shocked by it and a little annoyed, but I'm telling you it's going to happen. And I'll generally keep things moving. I'd like to watch a movie tonight, so everyone please read as quickly as you can. A few of our authors couldn't make it tonight, so their pieces will be performed by our talented Sorts editors and alumni, also scattered throughout the audience. For more information on readers, please see the contributors section in the latest Sorts. That's SORTES.co. For all websites, Instagrams, Twitters, and Mastodons. Do we have any questions before we begin the stuff? It went a bit quickly. I can repeat it all if you want me to. Good. First up tonight. Abigail Swoboda is a poet, pre-K teacher, and practitioner from West Philly in the great state of Pennsylvania. Abigail wrote that, I did not. Abigail will be performing tonight, I believe, with partner Pete on upright bass. Abigail and Pete, are you ready?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, so I had my piece, 5 folk tales in issue 12, and so I'll read 2 of those folk tales.
I'm sorry, one quick moment. I'm so sorry, but if everyone can mute themselves before you begin, it helps. I don't know. It gives me a great sense of comfort. But again, unmute yourself the moment that Abigail and Pete are done so that you can hoot for them. Okay? Thank you so much. Sorry, Abigail.
No, it's fine. The folktales are about Pennsylvania, which I think can be a pretty magical place. And the only other thing I'll say about it is that these are real things that happened. The last albatwitch staggers into a cabbage field to die. Once there were many albatwitches in Lancaster County, but now there is only one, and she is about to die. It is late October, and this field is full of cracked cabbages. In the middle of this cabbage field, an Amish girl harvests the cracked cabbages. Her small, hard hands are brown with layers of soil. The woven basket beside her overflows with crop. The last albatwitch staggers closer to the Amish girl and collapses beside her in the cabbage field. The soil is soft beneath the last albatwitch. The Amish girl looks up from picking and sees the last albatwitch. "What are you?" she asks in her language. "I am the last albatwitch," the last albatwitch says in hers. "I did not know you were allowed on this side of the Susquehanna," the Amish girl says. "Well, you see, I am dying," the last albatwitch says. "After me, there will be no more rules for albatwitches because there will be no more albatwitches. Here, eat some cabbage," the Amish girl says. "Eat some of my cabbage and you will feel a change come over you." The Amish girl cracks off a hearty peel of one of the cabbages from her basket and holds it out to the last albatwitch. "No," the last albatwitch says. "Then what is it that you want?" the Amish girl asks the last albatwitch. The last albatwitch tells her. The next day, the Amish girl returns to the cabbage field where the last albatwitch is dying. She brings her basket, which is no longer filled with cabbages. Now, the basket is full of fabric. "I have brought what you asked for," the Amish girl says, and unfolds the fabric in front of the last albatwitch. "What is it?" asks the last albatwitch. "It is a burial quilt," says the Amish girl. The burial quilt is burgundy and blue and purple and green and black. There are ties attached to the sides. Its patchwork geometry shimmers in the October sun. "You may die now," says the Amish girl, "and you will know peace." So the last albatwitch dies, and the Amish girl spreads the burial quilt out across the soft soil of the cabbage field. She hefts the small body of the last albatwitch into the center of the burial quilt. The Amish girl and the last albatwitch are the same size, only the last albatwitch is covered in wiry chestnut fur. The Amish girl finds herself imagining what the last albatwitch's fur must have felt like centuries ago, when many things were still soft. The Amish girl swaddles the last albatwitch in the burial quilt. First, she covers the head, then the feet, then the rest. She secures the shroud by wrapping the ties around the whole body. Then, she plants the last albatwitch among the cabbages. In the season that follows, an apple tree grows up from the body of the last albatwitch. The apples that burden the tree are red and beautiful and delicious, but they have no core. So the first apples that grow from the grave of the last albatwitch are also the last. Some things happen only once. There's an old man who walks from town to town along the Mason-Dixon line. From Delta to Whiteford to Fawn Grove to New Park to Norrisville to Stewartstown, then along the old train tracks between New Freedom and Railroad and Glen Rock and back again. He lives in a red and white and blue trailer in New Freedom, where Pennsylvania people have sown their seeds for centuries. He wears construction coveralls and ties a scarf around his left knee so that cars can better see him at the side of the road. Sometimes the old man hitches along his route. Sometimes he stops to chase children around in their yard while their mother watches on smiling. Sometimes he bums and smokes with a kind stranger, but mostly he chooses to walk. The old man is searching for something that he lost a long time ago. He searches as he walks. He searches under turned stones and he searches between the cracks in the asphalt. Then he searches inside of mailboxes and he glides his hand along the tops of door frames to search there too. People stop offering the old man rides when they see him walking. Someone calls the cops on the old man and he has to spend a night in jail for his searching, but he searches there too. The old man's search has always been lonesome and it grows even more lonesome still. Once even the road itself begins to turn the old man away, he returns to his red and white and blue trailer in New Freedom and he finally searches there instead. The old man begins to turn the soil around his trailer. He starts at one end of his yard and works his way to the other. He turns the earth with his hands tirelessly, pausing only to eat some of the earth before returning to his search. When the old man has turned all of the earth around the trailer, he pushes his trailer over and turns the earth beneath it. Translucent purple worms dance in the sudden space. The old man watches the worms until they point him to what he is looking for. A sprout of hair poking up from the soil. The old man grasps the sprout of hair and pulls it like a root vegetable. The old man pulls and pulls the hair from the earth. Suddenly out comes the body of a baby boy. The baby boy cries and gurgles like any baby does, even though this baby boy had been planted beneath the old man's trailer like a carrot, head up, feet down. The old man pulls the scarf from his left knee and wraps the baby boy in it. Then the old man tucks the swaddled baby boy into the top of his carpenter's coveralls. The old man knows that his search has come to an end. When the old man and the baby boy return to the road, no one sees them anymore. They walk unseen along the middle stretches of the Mason-Dixon, and their hearts beat against each other. When the old man walks, he leaves two sets of footprints behind him. Thank you so much. That's it.
Woo! Remember, this is your chance to take yourself off mute for just a moment, and you've missed the moment. Mark Russ is a psychiatrist in Westchester County, New York. He was born in Cuba, the son of Holocaust survivors, and the first in his family to earn a bachelor's degree. He has contributed to psychiatric literature throughout his career and has recently begun to publish short stories and nonfiction pieces. Everyone, Mark Russ. Woo!
Thank you. The doily. Thomas stood dumbfounded before the sepia photograph, which hung in the living room of the Agriturismo near Agrigento, where he and Harriet were staying. The matronly innkeeper, her gray hair in an untidy bun, and the faint trail of overripe Sicilian pecorino wafting behind her, approached them. Giuseppe Giordano, my great uncle. Difficult to explain. I tried. It is lighter, easier to say what you have not seen than to say what you see. Thomas tried to digest her words through her thick accent. The Son of Man, Harriet interjected, invoking Magritte. Yeah, without the apple. You can sort of see his face. Thomas turned toward the old woman. Can you tell us more about the photograph? Why is it the only one on the wall like that? Giuseppe's photograph was the last in a series of individual family portraits. Judging from their clothes, they all lived around the same time. The mask means the face is not seen, but the holes in l'ombretto say it is seen. The gray-haired proprietor said no more about her great-uncle, making a quick zipper motion across her lips. The object of Thomas's attention was a butterfly-shaped, loosely crocheted, white lace doily. Pressed between the protective glass and the photograph underneath, it partially obscured the face of a young man with a broad forehead and closely cropped beard. His eyes peered through the fenestrations of the delicate fabric. Thomas found the effect eerie, his imagination, like the doily, trapped behind the glass. Thomas and Harriet wished the old woman a good evening and walked up the narrow staircase to their own two small rooms, passing old photographs of the Greek temples of Agrigento. Harriet, I'd like to stay here a little while longer, Thomas declared, but was really asking for permission. They were traveling through Sicily and had allotted only a day to see the local sites. I want to understand what that crazy doily thing is about. The innkeeper turn you on? She's old enough to be my grandmother. Harriet smiled wryly, but would not relent. Uh-huh. Thomas, a well-regarded feature writer for the Baltimore Sun in his late 30s, was prone to marital wanderings. The therapist whom he finally agreed to see with Harriet after the most recent indiscretion suggested an extended vacation might help. The itinerary in Upper Hand belonged to Harriet. Come on, what do you say? Aren't you just a little curious? All right, 2 more days, but it better be good. Harriet now took a leisurely shower, playing a little with the handheld spray head. When she returned to the bedroom, Thomas was already snoring. Thomas awoke early the next morning and opened his laptop before brushing his teeth. He Googled doily, but drew a blank. Harriet, this city must have a library, maybe in the university. He showered, he shaved, he dressed, and grabbed a cup of coffee and a roll from the breakfast spread the innkeeper had set out. Harriet was still in bed as he went out. A taxi had just dropped off a guest at the inn. Thomas hopped in and asked to be taken to the Università Agrigento. It was about 5 kilometers from the Agriturismo. He paid the driver and stood before the library, an unimpressive 2-story building that looked like a warehouse. There was only one librarian, a young, dark-haired woman whose hair almost reached the small of her back. As he told her about the photograph, he couldn't help sneaking glances. She was striking looking, petite, wearing very tight jeans. I must say, I never heard such a custom, confessed the librarian, clearly intrigued by the question and a little by Thomas. I research in 1 day. Thank you, Thomas. Thomas turned to leave. How will I find you tomorrow? Alessia, everybody here knows me. Excited at returning to the library, Thomas, foregoing a taxi, jogged past the Giardino Botanico and the Archaeological Museum. An hour later, he was back at the Agriturismo. Thomas and Harriet spent the day touring the Valley of the Temples. Surrounded by the splendor of ancient Greek edifices, Thomas was able to let go of the photograph, at least for a few hours. That evening at dinner, he wondered out loud, maybe I can turn this doily thing into a piece for the paper. Harriet's attention was focused on the illuminated temples that could be clearly seen from the restaurant patio. Sure, why not? She said, if it pans out. During dessert, Thomas paused between bites of his pistachio cannoli. I'm working with a librarian. She's helping me out. He waited for the expected comeback, but none came. The next morning, Thomas returned to the library and found Alessia. She was wearing red-orange lipstick and brown mascara, a white button-down shirt, a black pencil skirt, and matching black heels without stockings. No good, Alessia reported. Seeing his disappointment, she added, I have one more idea. Come. Together they walked the craggy streets lined with cheese shops, wine bars, and souvenir stores with miniature Greek temple replicas in the window. Politely stopping every man or woman who looked older than 60, they met with many prego, prego, usually accompanied by head shakes and shrugged shoulders. After 2 hours, Thomas thanked Alessia. They shook hands rather formally, but she seemed in no hurry to let go. I'm sorry we couldn't find anything, he said, thinking he was now twice sorry. I too, she said. He was afraid to say anything else, so she turned and walked away. He watched her until she was out of sight. He walked the 5 kilometers back to the agriturismo, but the spring in his step was gone. Was the lace doily a weird convention or simply an idiosyncrasy of the Giordano family? He found Harriet reading on the balcony of their bedroom. She barely looked up when he stooped and gave her a kiss. Do you want to do something this afternoon, she asked. Sure, he said. Let me shower and change. But instead of undressing, he went to the living room, opened his laptop, and again Googled doily. So many entries, so many images, but nothing about photographs. He kept scrolling, and there it was. Many pages later. Doily, in a poem by someone named Elizabeth Bishop. It was called The Filling Station. He found it and read it again. He wasn't sure what the poet was trying to say, but the same lines kept drawing him back. Embroidered in daisy stitch with marguerites, I think, and heavy with gray crochet. Somebody embroidered the doily. Grabbing the laptop, he rushed back to the bedroom. Listen to this, he said, trying to control his voice. It's from a poem. Listen. Oh, why the doily? My question exactly. And this, somebody embroidered the doily. Do you see? Whoever inserted the doily made the doily. The lace concealed what dare not be seen. Someone loved him deeply. It's there between the openings in the lace. Who loved him? Harriet asked, not bothering to look up from her book. The doily maker. Harriet stifled a yawn. You promised we would be leaving today. Just a few more hours, Thomas pleaded. Thomas rushed back to the library by taxi, where he found Alessia helping a tall young man wearing a university football jersey at the circulation desk. Thomas, shifting from foot to foot, waited for the young man to leave. He hurriedly explained his new plan of attack, learn as much as they could about Giuseppe Giordano and follow his story. We can start by searching baptism records, marriage documents, census reports, Alessia offered. She began to stride toward the reference section, motioning for him to follow. Suddenly she stopped. No, this way. Thomas followed Alessia down a set of stairs and through the dark stacks. The air was heavy with the smell of old books. Alessia pulled a large volume off the shelf, a provincial history, and ran her finger down the index. I found something. She haltingly translated as she read. Giuseppe was the son of a wealthy landowner whose family could be traced to the time of Bourbon rule in the province of Agrigento. In a section of the stacks devoted to periodicals, she then found an article in the newspaper Giornale di Sicilia, published in May 1919. It revealed that Giuseppe Giordano's father and Giuseppe after him became men of honor, their clan joining another and forming a much respected and feared family. Cosa Nostra, remarked Thomas. Alessia nodded. She found an account of the younger Giordano's life and death toward the end of the same article. Skimming the piece, the librarian paraphrased as she translated. It appears the young Giuseppe rose quickly in the ranks of the Cosa Nostra, both because of his cleverness and brutality. He died a young man in his 30s. Reading directly now while translating, although how he died was not known, there was a rumor. He was kidnapped and executed. Alessia paused and looked up at Thomas momentarily. He broke the rule, the code of proper conduct. He loved the wife of his brother. Grazie, Thomas uttered softly, thinking for a moment to take advantage of the darkness. You are very welcome. Prego. Alessia awkwardly moved past Thomas, returning to the main room with the circulation desk. She accompanied Thomas outside the library and into the harsh afternoon light. They said their final goodbyes. Thomas walked down the now familiar block where the library stood and caught the librarian watching him as he turned the corner. He returned to the Agriturismo and found Harriet napping on the tufted chaise lounge in their bedroom. Thomas approached her quietly and gently kissed her forehead. Another tryst with that sexy librarian? Harriet muttered, slowly opening her eyes. Harriet, don't be silly. She was helping me with my research. Come downstairs to the living room. Thomas helped her up and led her by the hand as he retold the story of Giuseppe and how he died. They stopped in front of the line of photographs. Thomas now focused his attention on the portraits of the women. There, look, the picture next to Giuseppe. It showed a woman in a long-sleeved, high-collared black dress with a simple crucifix necklace. She was sitting on a wing-back chair in partial profile. He grasped Harriet's arm and pointed out the fuzzy image of an unfinished doily on the woman's lap. That's her, remarked Thomas, the doily maker, the lover. The truth seen could not be unseen. Thomas held Harriet more tightly. Do you see? Yes, Thomas, I see, Harriet said. She gently pulled away from his grasp. Thomas, I am leaving you. Thomas's face went white. This isn't working. I know. Thomas glanced again at the photograph of Giuseppe and finally understood its hold on him. Nothing happened, he murmured, but he knew it was too late. The innkeeper, surreptitiously observing the couple from the corner of the room, cleared her throat to let them know she was there, then returned to her delicate crocheting. The thread was blue, not gray.
Woo!
Yay.
And extra points for reading from paper. Thank you so much, Mark. That's all you're getting. You're all going back to mute now.
Several of us can actually sing that song in total if you let us.
Can you really? I'm not going to say no to that. That's an unexpected, but I would have put that in the program guide if I had foreseen that. That's fantastic.
Sheldon Canfer could have accompanied me, but he
Central High School Russian classes.
That's right. Central High School Russian classes.
How many of you,
Title.
Philadelphia Connection.
how many of you know Russian? or can somewhat speak Russian.
Mr.
Okay.
Dr.
This is your night. You have arrived at the correct location. I cannot speak any Russian. I know how to put together a Spotify playlist, but I don't know Russian at all. So, okay, let's see where this goes. All right. There's some Russian rap coming up. It might be highly offensive. I have no idea. Next up tonight. Okay, so if everyone could retreat to your muted hidey holes. Next up tonight, we were to hear from Connor Fisher, but I don't believe that I see Connor Fisher with us. Am I wrong? Connor, are you secretly here under one of these other names? Okay. Well, then you're just going to have to go to sortes.co. That's SORTES.co. And look up Connor Fisher. He has 5 fantastic poems there. So check him out. So things are really moving along now. And next up tonight, someone else who isn't here, but we foresaw it, Marianne Dimand, D-I-M-A-N-D. Marianne Dimand cannot be here tonight, but her blurb bio can. Marianne lives in Colorado, where she's busy turning a small horse property into a small farm. So that's clearly a good reason not to be here. Marianne's poems will be read by Sorts editor and author Betsy Herbert. So a little round of snaps for Betsy Herbert, please. Woo!
I snap myself. So I'm going to be reading 2 of Marianne Dimand 4 poems. And the first one is called Dispossessed. It took some time before I knew the whispers, the glints, the dust swirl sculpting air to image. The caress of tattered cobweb was a person. Ghost, I said, soft, so I wouldn't scatter them. Ghost, why are you with me? Are you a gift? Or may I find a present for you? A sigh, a sense of pressure dropped. A sentence, gentle in my mind. I like conversation more than anything, but no one's listened. Miner's laundry. The miner's laundry signs, grimed and tilting now. Dryer doors ajar like diving helmets, empty of salts, long fled from clogged and warming seas. Now I can only tramp the routes where once the backroad buses rolled, past rumbling mines and families counting dusty dimes. And I'll snap myself again.
Woo! Hooray for Betsy!
Ow! Hooray for
Thank you.
Marianne Dimand.
Sorry, I was busy I was muting people right up to that last moment. That should be muted. I apologize for
Thank you for that.
yeah, wow. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for jumping into the last moment, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, and we're just joined by Gabby Decker, who will be reading after our intermission, which is coming up very, very soon. And I will be reading a tiny bit right before it, but before that, obviously.
Russian class.
That's from the album Best Cossacks Songs, so I'm sure that you have that at home. Elana Kloss received a BFA in fashion design at Otis College of Art and Design and attended a short story writing class with Ron Darien at the UCLA Extension Program in 2021. She works designing and sketching for a small fashion company and is also a board member at Active Plus, a nonprofit that provides wellness programming for children in underserved areas. Elana was born in Alaska and has a passion for figure drawing, backpacking, and classical music and dance. She spends most of her time scratching away in a notebook she's always losing. Elana can't be with us tonight, so Elana's story will be read by me, Jeremy Tenenbaum. Hi. This is The Master by Elana Kloss. His footsteps approach two lacquered doors that open into the salon, where the morning bleeds. He places a cup of tea on a console imbued with red Chinese vinery. He moves toward me. Reindrag, he mutters. My gaze moved from his shoes to the hem of his jacket, where his hands gleam. His fingers are brilliant, stretching long and pale, worn like the walls, revealing a terrific elegance with nails well kept that sink in at the edges. His bones smooth and shape in a way that reminds me of natural pearls, and I squirm at the sight of him. Peering at the Dienstein Church, morning bells float on the dawn. Gothic points and arches ornate the Dusseldorf sky and show through a window that wraps north on the apartment. His footsteps draw close, and my pedals reflect fine glossed leather and a thick heel that digs in the carpet. He reaches a hand to his pocket and draws a monocle. Ah, he growls, fixing the glass to his eye. Beinen Steinenglach. Ruffling through half-written concertos, he searches for a piece he composed in 1793. Because it is 10 years past, and since a long man in a strange hat appeared in the doorway last month, the master has agreed to transcription for the violin. He fleshes the pages and stops. A book falls. I hadaim! The triumphant sound alerts my joy, and I know he has found the piece. He adjusts the seat, peels off his jacket, and lays it across the tufted bergère. The squeak of his shoes tells me it's time, and the night I have fought so fervently through disappears. The violent insomnias which I've endured, the silence that has lingered through the apartment and over leaking shadows and cobwebs, the waiting idle, yearning and skittish, unable to pace, causing me to count the tall towers of the city, the envisioning of wild fantasies of his slender body resting his reflection on the window before turning to play me. Malnourished and weakened from the night, I collect my strength for his play. He organizes 10 fingers across my ivory tongues, and with the release of a breath, his skin moves into mine. That's Elana Kloss. I'm giving me a snap too. That was great.
Help yourself.
We will now be taking a 5-minute tiny break, a tiny little wisp of a break for you to get up, get another drink, another... Oh, hello, Moo. Look at Moo, the cat. Okay, hold on. No, don't distract me with cats. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Feel free to keep listening. Do not wander off more than 5 minutes, because if you do, then you're going to ruin this whole break thing for everyone forever. And we love this little intermission. So, stretch, come back in 5 minutes, don't go far. Feel free to talk to each other.
Они до сей поры с времен тех дальних летят и подают нам голоса. Не потому так часто и печально мы замолкаем, глядя в небеса. Летит по небу клин усталый, летит в тумане на исходе дня. краю есть промежуток малый. Быть может, это место для меня. Настанет день и журавлиной стаей я поплыву в такой же земле. Из-под небес по птичьи окликая всех вас, кого оставил на земле. Мне кажется порою, что солдаты с кровавых не пришедшие полей не в землю нашу полегли когда-то, а превратились в белых журавлей.
Excuse me. That's all the break you get. We're back. I could see some of you beginning to wonder and wander, your eyes glazing over with joy. So, welcome back to the Sorts 12 reading for Sorts 12, by coincidence. Up with the Yardkeeper, which is a lovely phrase that is taken from Crime and Punishment, I believe. So, as you flip through during your next reading of Crime and Punishment, no, I'm sorry. Was it, or Brothers Karamazov? Gabby, do you remember? Gabby, are you here?
Can you hear me? No.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Crime and Punishment.
Okay, good. It
Yeah.
sounds more Crime and Punishment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, well, next time you're reading Crime and Punishment, as you do, look for it because it'll be an exciting little surprising pop of recognition. Okay, welcome to part 2 of the reading. We're going along at a astounding pace, and we're achieving this speed mostly by eliminating readers. And it's working out very well. For those of you who are heavily invested in the SORTES sphere, may I heavily suggest investing in one of these little things. This is SORTES Sampler 2. It's got 3 things in it, including a short story by Max D. Stanton called Cold Reading about a seance gone marvelously awry. Danielle Gatto Hirano's 5 collages, which are brilliant, as you can see. And Yuri Rosenshine's cycle of poems, Lotus. This beautiful little book is one of only 2 books we've ever put out physically, and is just meant as like a little tasting menu of many of the pieces that we've published through 12 issues online. And it's $10 plus $3.19 in shipping. But if you're in the Philadelphia area, I will bring it to your door and slip it through your mail slot into your dog's mouth. We also have mugs, and look at that. Look at that. Yeah. Look, Betsy got so excited. You didn't know we had mugs, did you, Betsy?
I had no idea.
No, well, you should visit the warehouse more often, Betsy.
What kind of operation we're under.
I know you really. I'll get my intern to send you one.
We're at mug level. I think I'm your intern, so.
I thought I was my intern, but all right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. We have a pancake hierarchy here at the SORTES. If anything, it sort of dips up at the edges. I'm the least important, and everyone else somehow is just more interesting. Oh, okay. Next up, we are moving onwards very quickly with the second half of our show, and it begins with the artwork of Irina Tal. And Irina is a Russian artist, and for time zone purposes, is less likely to be with us tonight because it's like 19 hours in the AM, or I don't know how time is told in other time zones, but it's way terrible. But I don't think Irina's with us tonight. But Irina's with us almost invariably. Somehow she joins us very often. So I'm afraid she can't be here tonight. But I'm showing off Irina's work for her. First, the blurb. Irina Tal, whose proper name is Irina Novikova, is an artist, graphic artist, illustrator, and writer who illustrates short stories and writes fairy tales. She graduated from the State Academy of Slavic Cultures with a degree in art and has a bachelor's degree in design. Her first personal exhibition, My Soul is Like a Wild Hawk, 2002, was held in the Museum of Maxim Bogdanovich. In her works, Irina explores ecological and anti-war themes. In 2005, she devoted a series of works to the Chernobyl disaster, and her series, The Red Book, is dedicated to rare and endangered species of animals and birds. Her work has appeared in Gypsophilia, Harpy Hybrid Review, and previously in SORTES. I'm going to now share her work and scroll slowly through it so that we can all have a moment to look at it. But really, go to sortes.com, take a look at it yourself slowly and patiently. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love featuring her stuff whenever she deigns to send us some. Okay, I'm going to be real quiet while this scrolls past. And that's Irina Tal. Obviously, that was me grabbing you by the hand and pulling you through the museum as quickly as possible. But hooray for Irina, who is not here, but often is. Okay. I'm going to count that as a performance. So. But that's that for that. Next up tonight, Suzanne St. Therese holds a BA in English Literature from Loyola Marymount University and a BS in Urban Landscape Architecture from City University of New York. A landscape designer and architect for 25 years, Suzanne was a master gardener in the University of Connecticut's Master Gardener program and was part of an international team that helped erect Christo's The Gates in Central Park. Her work is published or forthcoming in Caveat Lector, Dash Literary Journal, El Portal, the Loch Raven Review, and October Hill Magazine. Everyone, a very loud snapping for Suzanne St. Therese. Woo!
I like it. Thank you. Radical landscape. Emma still believed in the 24 by 36 inch page and had the black tube with rolled drawings strapped to her back to prove it. Backup thumb drives were in her front jeans pocket, and her T-square, a sentimental tool gifted to her by her dad, hung from a backpack loop. The bag was filled with boxed and sharpened Ticonderoga No. 2s, and every width of black Sharpie, ultrafine to jumbo chisel. She had worked drinking cold coffee and snacking on stale donuts until 1 that morning, and now she was back, biking the New York City streets at 6 a.m. for the 9 a.m. deadline. The plan had to be perfect. Mrs. Milstein was a formidable hoverer. While there had been formal meetings during which she expressed her phantasmagorical views for her 5-acre estate, she was never far away during any site work, demolition, reconstruction, and planting, constantly peering from the shadows inside her architectural monolith in Upper Westchester. A tiny woman with raven hair that eclipsed her wrinkled age, she had hovered through and already received the AIA award for her innovative and aesthetically minimalist Japanese pool house. She changed the exterior color of the Japanese house 4 times, the shades indistinguishable from one another. The articulated shrubbery for the rear garden had to be correct, and for that, there were too many replacements to count. After the final installation, she changed the flooring from bamboo to granite tile because it was cooler on her bare feet. She rejected all proposed windows, settling for bamboo panes and free-flowing linen shades for fresh air. Her reputation as a problematic client preceded her. Emma had been asked to run with Mrs. Milstein's radical plan to be given the opportunity to fail. Her work showed promise, with local press coverage and regional awards for a few public gardens and plazas. The initial expectation that she would be a landscape architecture Joan, refining the male partner's designs until all hours while they went out for drinks, had been blown to smithereens when she received her first commission at a private school in New Canaan. The native gardens, open classrooms, and campus shrouded woods she designed created spaces not only functional, but beautiful. One phone call from the headmaster, and she scored another commission for a public plaza in New York. For Mrs. Milstein's concept, she suggested a web of inlaid Corten steel based upon the 1865 graphite rendering of a neuron, a swath of grassy earth extending from the main house's rear doors with the pool the cell's nucleus. Thin axons ran out of the amoeba-shaped bluestone pool surround with one extended dendritic area, a playground, and others layer upon layer of her favorite flowers. The inlaid steel divided undulating sculptural turf from Mrs. Milstein's landscape painting practice, the blades lit and shadowed by the sun and surrounding tree canopy. The pool and pool house were aligned on a central axis from the rear house doors. So while the division of space seemed abstract, there was always that one clean central sightline. Emma practiced this description while rendering the plan and elevation in colored graphite. The firm was old school and believed such efforts were worth the presentation value over the automated colorization from a computer. She tapped the thumb drives in her pocket as a reminder to print out black and whites of the landscape plan for the meeting. She had stuffed her lissé leggings, J. Crew knit top, and good shoes into her backpack, worn her presentation jacket, and prayed her deodorant worked. She set the plan upon a clipboard easel, checked on the tea kettle, and ensured she tastefully displayed the Russell Wright tea set. She discreetly labeled the tray's surface, the ivory cup from Mrs. Milstein, neutral and calm, leaving the colors for the presentation. It was 7:30 a.m. and the meeting wasn't until 9. She decided to walk around the neighborhood in her journée flats and meeting outfit would clear her head and help her build a fresh perspective. She was often surprised at her works months later, while excessively critical during the time of presentation. Even though the drawings were whirling about her mind, having her eyes see the provincial low brick buildings and tree-lined streets with flowers, stoops, and tidy sidewalks might jar her sensibilities enough to know the excellence of her work. There was a newsstand at the corner. She would pick up something ridiculous like People and go read at the other corner's cafe. She tried her hand at the crossword puzzle in the back, which only proved how out of touch she was with popular culture. She checked the red carpet pages and found the costumes unimaginative or ridiculous. Everyone has to show skin, lots and lots of skin, she murmured to herself. Hey, Emma, what's up? It was Thomas, ordinarily her nemesis in the office. He was a constant undermining reminder of just which gender was in charge at the firm. Just taking a break before Mrs. Milstein, she replied after swallowing some bits of muffin. Oh, I was picking up some muffins for the meeting, said Thomas. It's ridiculous. We always provide this stuff, but nobody eats them. Well, pick out your favorites then. You may be the one eating it later. Good idea. Hey, want to walk back together? She didn't, hoping to stretch out her break a little longer, but said, yeah, that'd be great. Thomas returned to her table with a white cardboard box and a cup of chai. She could smell the spices and could imagine him thinking a simple cup of coffee would never do. She slipped the People below the table and onto the chair next to her. She didn't want him to think she was so pedestrian. He would have at least chosen the Wall Street Journal or Architect magazine. We have plenty of time. It's a nice day. Let's go around the long block. And she heartily agreed, even if it was Thomas. What'd you get? Oh, the usual. I added a couple of raspberries since, as you said, we'll be eating them later, and they're my favorite. Good. A couple of beats of silence. Then, how did the rendering go? Pretty well, I think. I think there's enough dimension to please Mrs. Milstein's aesthetic. Don't be too disappointed. I don't think Mrs. Milstein is pleasable. Well, it is a little woo-woo, but we can't tell her that. I've been debating about the neuron. It's an original concept and would balance out that pool house well, but it might be too out there. She's a little out there, replied Thomas. I think the concept is brilliant, but you're right. She might not want the representation of a brain in her backyard. Got any good synonyms for dendrite? Emma asked. I swear I'm going to slip. Use it. She'll act like she knows what you mean. Thank you, Thomas. That's a load off. Emma held the door open, and they strolled into the first floor reception with its tall vase of Casablanca lilies and light blue reception counter. Good morning, miss. Thomas thought this was funny. Bring Mrs. Milstein into the conference room when she arrives. No waiting. Yes, Mr. Dribble. Miss thought she was funny. Emma found the whole thing irrelevant. She rushed into the conference room and flipped over the presentation pages on the easel. She let out her breath. It was perfect. The whole thing was perfect.
Woo! Thank you so much. You can tell we're progressing up from the folk songs. We're moving up. Let's just hear a little Russian. Okay, that's it. You can make your own Spotify playlists. Next up tonight, we have a nonfiction piece, which we very rarely, shockingly rarely, sadly rarely, have in Sorts. Written by Fabrizia Faustinella. Fabrizia is a board-certified internist. She grew up in Italy and moved to the U.S., where she's a faculty member at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. Fabrizia is a filmmaker, producer, and director. She has developed short movies and documentaries to address social problems, ethical issues, and inner biases and prejudices. Her productions have received several national and international awards. Her current focus is healthcare disparities, patient advocacy, narrative medicine, and medical humanities. In addition to research and education articles, Fabrizia writes essays inspired by her personal and professional experiences. Through her writing, she explores the fragility of life, human relationships, and the individual's struggle for survival, while searching for elements of shared humanity. Her essays have been published in both academic and literary journals. Fabrizia is here tonight, silently, semi-anonymously, out in the darkness. If you see her, feel free to, whatever the Zoom version of wave or wink might be. It might actually be a wave or a wink. But she has graciously, she won't be presenting it herself, but she's asked if one of us can present a small portion. And so Gabby Decker, Sorts editor and previous Sorts contributor, will be reading a portion of Fabrizia's essay tonight. So everyone, Fabrizia and Gabby.
Yay, Fabricia. I will happily take the helm. All right, so I'm going to read a portion. Let me find where I put it on my desktop. All right. It is titled, Dedicating Ourselves to Humanity. Who has the right to tell a story? In her book, Poisoned Water, Pulitzer Prize finalist and award-winning investigative reporter Candy Cooper reveals a true story of Flint, Michigan. Through the interviews with residents and in-depth research into legal records, Cooper shows not just how the crisis unfolded in 2014, but also how it originated and what fueled it. Cooper uncovers an unsettling history of racism, redlining, and segregation that led to the poisoning of thousands of people who are still fighting to this day for clean water and healthy lives. At a masterclass on writing for social justice, Cooper said that she had almost abandoned her investigation because of a strong pushback from the Flint community. She was an outsider, privileged enough to not personally be affected by the kind of environmental racism destroying lives and futures in Flint. She did not even have the right, did she even have the right to tell the story? Her doubts became so pervasive that she almost decided not to write her book. What a loss that would have been. I commented at the end of her presentation. I almost asked from the audience, who has the right then to write or fight for social justice? Do we have to be part of the wronged group to be considered legitimate voices? Or a conscientious approach, factual and emotional, accurate and collaborative, is what should be valued when telling other people's stories? Rather than belonging to the same group, what would happen to any form of investigative journalism if we applied the rule of belonging to a specific group as a prerequisite to engage in the process of uncovering the truth? What about the people nobody listens to or are too afraid to speak for themselves? The people who the established powers have decided don't matter. The people who have been made invisible. If no one else is telling their story, and that's an important story to be told, then no matter who you are and what group you belong to, that story should be brought to light. Isn't that what we should do as concerned members of society? Can the most neglected and violated people also be burdened with the continual, exhausting, and disheartening work of advocating unflaggingly for themselves? Shouldn't that labor fall more fairly on those with privilege or comfort and the consciousness to care? I am a physician, a patient advocate. Advocacy is defined as any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports or defends, or pleads on behalf of others. In my experience as a member of the Health and Public Policy Committee of the Texas chapter of the American College of Physicians, when advocating for my patients with our policymakers, the most powerful tool of advocacy is storytelling. It is telling the stories of my patients. Stories have the power to persuade and move people to action. It has been reported that stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts alone and help make the case for why a policymaker should stand behind a cause. Yay!
Woo! Great. Thank you so much, Fabrizia and Gabby. Thank you wonderfully. I have to keep it going till we hear some Russian.
Они говорят, им нельзя рисковать, потому что у них есть дом.
James Wilcox taught English in Asia for 20 years. He worked for Harvard University as a medical coder and currently works as pet caregiver in Cambridge, Massachusetts. James has published previously with Terror House magazine. Everyone, James Wilcox. Woo! James, you're muted. Yes. I'm always tempted to allow someone to do a whole reading muted, and then we clap afterwards, and we all agree to keep the secret. But no, no. Let's. I would prefer to hear James Wilcox. Woo!
Okay. I thought I'd recite the first 7 lines of the Iliad and then translate the 7 lines. Menina edita edo akaleas ulame hemori kaihoi salge eteke halas diptamut sukas awadi for absent heda ona tuste haloria tuke finessen oyanoisi to pasi diwasta galea de bule exudata prota diaste tenere santa atre des to an oxon drone hi diwas aculis. Okay, now I'm going to translate those. The searing passion, pierce and thrill, sing through me, goddess, ring and drill, dance the light, bounce the ball, bright and spiraling, brilliant fluming, color inject the killing rage, single aim disaster shot, of sun of sepia spewed and clouded Peleus, craddock he-man of pain, Acalus. Ventilate me, Calliope, beautiful voiced, rainbow toned, heartbeat timed with the lethal frenzy, fierce and sawing. Which unleashed set swarming stings, pointed pangs, and clement aches, red hot cling fast, stuck and hooked upon the becratered skull colliding, push and pull hard, akaioi, steam rolling noisemakers, oboe blowers, cymbal bashers, tom-tom pounders, quantum charge, rhythm ranks, and by degrees in quick succession, forced submission, acquiescence, tumbling rose, brought them to their knees. A fit of wrath, which, somber tracing, limber shooting, undercast, shot propelled, to the gloaming abyss, black-holed icy invisible sphere, way down low, sped ahead, bubble trace, neutrino whooshed, primitive, proaptic, hypospatial, hypertemporal, teleported atom twinkles, whizzing droves, and robust teams of cling-bright, icebound, flame-blown souls, shrill osmotic, sublimated, pale discolored, punctured heads, of commandos all pumped up, anabolic, glamour cranked, single X-ray, double Y-beamed, 3D Z engirdered, shadow jagged, glowing shrapnel, glory dyed, crystallized, and made the bodies spear-ribbed, blood-spilled, snatchable spoils, fire divorced, storm detached, plunder galore for roving packs of rabid dogs, and big and assorted circling birds, wheeling vultures, diving buzzards, haunting hulking scavengers, vortical adumbration, severed feast for gashing beaks and ripping teeth, plucking talons, razored claws, and thus the will of Indigo Zeus was being fulfilled, future-laden heavy casualties, human pressured, tribe wandering, Bathysternus ultimamic, mound profound, ravine ribbon, strata-colored, Mobius strip, deep and breasted, bright expanding, dark contracting, axis roaring, earth ball, blue bunch mountains, green sweep valleys, omnipassive globe pamboterus, rich all feeding, fruit exuberant, fish abounding, song and bird about, orbit nimble, friction fan, war revved, man slashed. Keen and sway, potent chat, out sweet from the time indeed when first colliding, face loss bam, radical impact, stinging fire ant, bite pack backhand, swift imperial rocket smack, before the tambourine of boxing, flute and drum pace polarized, per static severed, diastemic, standing apart, strife split, maiden separated, son of a truce, ruler of men, and sparked oculus, loyal to gods, fire slit, royal slighted, ranked spit, rep slapped, stepped off the mat and out of the ring. Granted, just a tad over the top.
No, that's fantastic. That was a shot. Woo!
Terrific.
Thank you.
Here's that rap I talked about. Get your Cyrillic dictionaries.
Здорово, заебал. На заднем сиденье этот читатель бабок. Один бэк Луи, второй Гуччи. Я купил два, один бэк Вуд, но два круче. Я скурил два, ездил на Садово-Кудринскую. Я мутил два, никогда полковникам не писал заявы. Группа Би-2, да.
We don't play a lot of rap in these readings, but when we do, it is Russian. And I hope I didn't offend. I don't know what it sounded meaningful. It sounded like a real passionate bit of something. Everyone, we have come to our last reader presenter tonight. I hope that you see how quickly we tried to move things along because we care about you. Tonight, our last presenter, our last author is Nicki Chen. Nicki Chen has been published in Tide Pools Magazine, Confrontation Magazine, and City Primeval. She won a bronze medal in Best Regional Fiction in the Independent Publisher Book Awards 2021 for her novel When in Vanuatu, and was a finalist in the Indie Excellence Book Awards for Tiger Tail Soup, a novel of China at war. Nicki received an MRA in creative writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts and a BA in elementary education from Seattle University. For 20 years, she lived in Asia and the South Pacific with her husband and their 3 daughters. She now lives in Edmonds, Washington, a sometimes rainy, often beautiful little city overlooking Puget Sound. Nicki is unable to join us tonight. So a portion of Nicki's very interesting, very brilliant story will be read by Sorts editor and author alumni Emily Zido. So for Nicki and Emily, hooray! Woo!
Hey. This is a portion of the story exposed by Nicki Chen. I encourage you to go online and read the rest. It's wonderful writing. It's early morning, July 6th, and Bob and I are eating breakfast on the patio. Anyone peeking over the steel gate at the side of the garden would see us. Bob in his cream shirt and silk tie squeezing lime onto his papaya, and me lightly covered in oatmeal-colored raw silk, spreading strawberry jam on my toast. My observer would see our Filipina maid in her neat yellow and white uniform walking toward us with a pot of hot coffee. He would notice the potted palmera, the maidenhair fern, the spacious garden at the patio's edge, smooth and green with brilliant tropical flowers climbing the walls. He would hear Tessie greeting us softly, calling us ma'am and sir. All in all, his impression would be one of gracious living, peace, a measure of success. I pour milk into my coffee, and Bob cuts his papaya slice, 2 lengthwise slashes, and numerous quick crosscuts. He mentions an appointment he has this morning with the Minister of Finance. It shouldn't take long, he says, that is, assuming the minister's secretary remembers this time to inform him. He turns his knife on its side and cuts the squares of papaya off the skin. The mist that was resting on the surface of the lagoon at sunrise is gone. A thin slice of the blue Pacific is visible beyond Aracor Peninsula. The air is fresh and warm. A visitor from the United States would be reminded of vacations he'd been on or dreamed of. He would frown at us, suspecting we took the warmth and beauty for granted. I've been doing this for a long time, creating for myself a sympathetic observer. Today, though, it's different. Today, I've moved back a step or two, and I see myself watching the imaginary person who is watching me. It's a perspective I don't particularly enjoy. Maybe I'll get used to it. I certainly wouldn't want to blame Ginny for anything. I started feeling uneasy even before her visit, a strange sense of dread that I succeeded for the most part in ignoring. When her plane landed, it seemed that everything was okay. She and her daughter climbed down from the plane. They waved up at me, and I leaned close to the wire mesh and waved back. I called Ginny's name from the observation deck. I was thrilled to see her again, this old friend, every bit as thrilled as I told everyone I would be. Outside the customs area, we hugged, and she introduced me to Kirsten. Last time I saw her, aside from Christmas card photos, she was a toddler. Now she was an attractive high school senior, soon to head off to college. Then Ginny and I stepped back and looked at each other. And below the smiles and the pleasure, at the bottom of my chest, I felt something else. It was like the tap of a padded drumstick on a very large kettle drum, the sound low and edgeless, seemingly unheard. If someone had asked me then to interpret the feeling, I would have called it excitement. But now I wonder if it wasn't fear. I think that afternoon, only 12 days ago, I had the same sensation looking at Ginny as I did the day we became friends, the sense of being known. Only then I was a college freshman from Wenatchee, longing to be known, and she, also a freshman from a small town, wanting to know me. We met in the dormitory, 4th floor, West Wing. She was on our way to the shower room. I had my door open. She saw me pulling back my hair and folding it under, admiring the reflection in a hand mirror of my reflection in the mirror over the sink. And she stopped, leaning her hip against my door frame. "You don't want to cut your hair," she said simply, confident. She knew my heart better than I did. And though I already had an appointment at the beauty parlor, already had plans to skip my afternoon Spanish class, I dropped my hair. Then I turned my head from side to side and, feeling the softness of it on my shoulders, realized she was right. I didn't want to cut it. Ginny just smiled and continued on toward the shower room, her thongs slapping knowingly against the bottoms of her heels. By the end of fall quarter, she was my best friend, she and Bernadette. We were a threesome. Gin, Sin, and Bern, we called ourselves for a joke. In those days, gin was just another drink, and sin and burning were distant, if not impossible fates, things from which we would almost certainly be preserved by all our good intentions. Now, so many years later, I'm all too familiar with gin, an ingredient in Bob's first drink of the evening. And though not exactly preserved from sin and the threat of burning, I have managed over the years to banish the concepts quite nicely from my mind. I expected Ginny to look different, and she did. In the airport, even as I was feeling and dismissing the timpani beat in my chest, I noted all the little signs of her aging, the expanded width of her hips, the scattering of white in her auburn hair that she easily could have covered with a good hair dye. I helped them pull their suitcases over the curb. On the sidewalk, we passed through a small crowd of people waiting for relatives and friends and business associates. Most of them, both the Ni Vanuatu and the expatriates, wore thongs and sandals. Some children and a few adults were barefoot. A man whom I knew as a longtime expatriate, scruffy in his safari shorts and his Aussie bush hat, leaned against the wall. 2 minibuses waited at the curb for their loads of tourists. I glanced quickly at Ginny. This airport scene had come to seem normal to me, but I wondered what she thought. Vanuatu was not the kind of place one would expect Bob to be working in at this point in his career. In actuality, it had been a demotion for him, a kind of exile from his organization's center of power. But we never spoke of that, and I imagine no one understood or speculated on the reason he had been sent here. I distracted people when they came to visit with Vanuatu's strangeness and its pleasures, sailboats and flying fish and spitting volcanoes. I took them snorkeling off Moso Island and hiking up Les Cascades. I gave parties, introducing them to an exotic mix of people. It was easy to impress visitors. I was worried, though, that Ginny would be different. She had always talked back, always challenged my interpretation of things. And the rest of the story is online.
Woo! Thank you to Abigail Swoboda, accompanied by Pete on upright bass. Thank you, Mark Russ. Thank you, Connor Fisher, even though you were not here. But thank you anyway for contributing. Thank you, Mary Ann Dimand, however you are pronounced. And thank you, Betsy Herbert, for reading Mary Ann's text. Mary Ann. Dimand. Thank you, Elana Kloss, read by me. Thank you, me. Thank you, Irina Tall. Thank you, Suzanne St. Therese. Thank you, Fabrizia Fasta, read by Gabby Fernandez. Thank you, Gabby Fernandez. Thank you, James Wilcox. Thank you, Nicki Chen. Thank you, Emily Zaido, for reading Nicki Chen. And thank all of you so much for sticking out this incredibly brief, condensed, wonderful, vaguely Russian issue 12 reading. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take yourselves off mute and make giant noise for each other, please.
Thank you,
That's
Jeremy.
it. Woo!
Huge.
Good job.
Мамба, мамба, хуямба. Уа! А вы хотите песен, их есть у меня. Я переору любого соловья. Я старый металлист, тусовщик и стиляга. А сейчас будет зла и матерый соляга. Magic people, voodoo people. А вы хотите песен? Их есть у меня. И пусть я пьяный в жопу, как последняя свинья. И пусть уже давно не стоит моя шняга. А сейчас будет зла и матерая соляга. Magic people, voodoo people. Я пою, ребята играют, не попадаем друг друга, бывает. Пускай в нашей музыке много изъян. Давай солягу, давай костям. Magic people, voodoo people. Magic people, voodoo people. Voodoo people. Давай, давай. Magic people. Voodoo people. Magic people, voodoo people.